in introducing the guest to you. He is Dr. S.UMASHANKAR, Senior Lecturer in English, Eastern University, Sri Lanka. And he is an outstanding academician, having his graduation as multidisciplinary aspect. He has completed his BSc Bioscience, MA in Linguistics, MSc in Food Preservation Technology, BA in English and English Language Teaching, and also honored by PhD in Language Testing in University of Bedfordshire, United Kingdom. His professional achievements are many as an educationalist in various universities like University of Colombo, University of Cambridge, and University of Eastern Studies. He has done his many publications and he has served as a person in charge of certificate in English conducted for candidates in the Eastern Province by Eastern University of Sri Lanka. He is a visiting lecturer in English at the Open University of Sri Lanka and is the former coordinator for English Language Teaching Unit, and he has involved in English language teaching since 1992 and in the government schools until 2003, and he has joined his teaching profession in Eastern University Sri Lanka since 2003. His interested areas were second language acquisition versus second language learning, washback to learning outcomes, washback of language tests, exploring language assessment and testing, learning environment versus learning acquisition and learning. Yes, we have such a versatile personality among us today as the keynote speaker, and we shall make the best use of his session and make us explore to the arena that he is giving us today. With this small introduction, I would like to welcome our keynote speaker today to our platform on behalf of the management teaching fraternity of Sri VASAVI, principal of Sri VASAVI College, ERODE. Dear participants, stay tuned with our chief guest today. Sir, I'm just handing over the floor to you, sir. You can join the participants. Thank you, everyone. Sir, you can mute your audio and video and you can join the participants, sir. Yes, sir, you're in.
Hi, guys. Hi, guys. And let me first with a workshop on behalf of the Sri VASAVI College. So thank you very much, Dr. Maithili and participants. Hi, guys. I hope that you have been safe and sound in the wake of COVID-19 and hopefully continue so until the threat is over. Meanwhile, I am Dr. S.UMASHANKAR, a senior lecturer in English at one of the universities in Sri Lanka, and I am a researcher, and my field of interest is language assessment and its impact on teaching and learning. And also, I like to involve in research work related to translation and research. So this is my brief introduction. Hopefully the session would be useful for you, and while I'll present, listen to me carefully. When you have any concerns, problems, note down, and after the presentation, I'll answer your questions. Thank you, guys. Let us start the presentation, please. Hello there. So,
Say,
yeah, I'm Umashankar. So, we'll
Sir,
start.
yes. Yes, sir. Your
Hello.
PPT is ready, sir. You can start, sir.
Yep. So, let me start with my first, the introduction. So, I'm going to basically touch upon two areas, research and translation, and the role of translation in research. I don't know whether you are aware, translation is the fundamental, it's the basic of any research work, whether qualitative, quantitative, but translation is the fundamental. You may wonder why. We'll see. You will. Let me put it this way: your data collection tools and your supervisors, examiners. Yes, of course, it's also a vital role to play. But above all, translation is the fundamental of your research work. And in our presentation, we would see the role that translation plays in your research work. So now the trend. Can the audience, can the participants think over the trend? Can you connect your research work and translation and the role that the translation would play in your research work, whether it is qualitative, quantitative, cross-cultural research? I'll give you a minute to think over, to refresh your memories, and to recollect your experience. So share your experience, think over on the areas, translation, and research. Yes, this is the trend now. All these days we've been looking at research works, publications in English. But publications, research in a source language is very rare. It's hard to come by. So the purpose of the research is lost. You do a research to find solution to your own people. When you do research and you publish in English, so the very same purpose is lost. So the native people, they don't understand your findings in English. Most of them don't understand. So your hard work, your purpose is lost. So now the trend is to do your research in a source language. If you want, later you can translate into the target language. So now the new trend is that. And also you know that, as I said, translation means language is the fundamental of any research, especially cross-cultural qualitative research, language. Why I say that? We'll say you refer books for your literature review. So you translate from English to target language or Tamil or whatever. Even same language, it is also cross-cultural and translation involves. You read and note down some points and then again you write on your own words. So translation involves as well as cross-culture involves. We'll say both in English, but the researcher's culture is different from your culture. So language is fundamental, translation is fundamental in your research. So that is very important. So the trend is doing research in source language, and the important aspect, important element is language translation. We'll move on to the next slide. On the other hand, what happens when you do research, when you publish in your own native language, you don't get wider range of reading audience, a limited number of audience, limited number of people, and also you have less number, less reference. A few people refer your publication, and also maybe the findings are very useful, but it is excluded from reviews because of the reason that is not in English. So important data are ignored. So on one hand, we saw native language research in your own language. But on the other hand, if you don't present it, publish it in English, only it reaches a few number of audience. So you should solve that, the tension between native language and target language. You are in a dilemma, especially young researchers like you. You don't know what language that you should do your research. So the ball is on your side. You should decide on it, whether it is native language or English or in both languages. First you do it in your language, then it translate it to English. So that's how you should reduce the tension. So you should decide on it, what language that you are going to publish, what language that you are going to do your research. As I said, all research works involve cross-cultural translations, interpretations, and transliterations, whether it is qualitative or quantitative, whatever it may be, the research work involves translations. And we would see some definitions: translation, interpretation, transliterations. So the idea is clear. The trend is to do your research in your own language, but limited audience. So decision is yours. You should decide which language that you are going to present your findings, do your research. Let's move on. So whatever it may be, native language, target language, source language, but translation involves, we saw that. It is the fundamental, I said. So no escape. So you should face, you should be familiar with the translation process, the issues, and you should know how to solve some of the issues that you come across in translation. And later we can see that in your research report, most of the researchers, they don't mention what are the issues that they have faced and how they have solved. That puts the entire findings qualitative, and I mean the validity and reliability issues. The readers don't know how the researcher faced the issues, translation especially, and how he solved the problems. So as young researchers, keep this in mind. Translation is important, and allocate 1 or 2 pages at least to tell what are the issues that you faced and how you handled those issues. Gap. As I said, no researcher, most of them don't explain what problems that they come across while they do their translation, while they do their literature review. And what are the procedures, how they overcome the problems. As a result, as I said, the reliability and validity issues. It makes your research findings invalid rather. So make sure you don't make the same mistake. So you are going to fill in the gap. The gap is that no information about the problems and how you settle or solve the problems. This is very important because of these reliability and validity issues. One should accept your findings. So you should fill up the gaps. That is up to you. So that is one of the lessons that you learn out of this workshop. Many lessons, and you are going to do your research in a target language or source language, whatever, and you know now, translation involves. That is the fundamental element. And there are gaps when you compare, when you see findings of the researchers. They always focus on their research questions and objectives of the research. They forget the important element, the translation, and to explain the readers how they handle the pressure, handle the problems, and solve it. So the aim of this workshop to explore the key issues in translation and finding solutions to those key issues. As young researchers, please focus on this, right? Translation. You might have wondered why I said translation is fundamental. Yeah, it is equally important or more than important than your research tools, your supervisors and examiners and your findings, whatever. This is the basic. So some of the key terms and translation and its meaning, and you can find thousands of definitions to these terms. So basically, translation means you transfer ideas from one language that can be the source language and transfer to another language that may be the target language. It may be spoken, written, or whatever text. You transfer information from one language to another, source language to target language. You are not only transfer ideas from source to target, one language to another, but you transfer a lot of things. Socio-culture. You transfer culture from one language to another. You transfer the context from one language to another. And you cross boundaries when you translate, when you transfer ideas from source language to target. We'll take, for instance, food items. We'll say pizza. I don't know whether sometimes it's very foreign for local people like us. So you transfer some culture from one language to another. You cross border and you also transfer context. So the simple definition, you transfer ideas from one language, source language, to target language. Why you do translation? To make ideas, findings available to wider audience. You reproduce findings, facts from one language to another to make it available to wider audience. That is the purpose of translation. Even in your research work, you make it available to wider audience. We'll say you find something in English and you transfer it to some other language, Tamil. So you widen the audience. So you make it available to large number of people the findings. You reproduce and make it available to wider audience. So that is one of the purposes of translation. Now, transliteration, it's similar to translation or rather different from that. Transliteration. Transliteration, when you don't find the exact word or terminology to translate the word or phrases. So you write or describe what that particular term means in one language to another. So when you find the exact equivalence or exact meaning might not exist in the target language, then you need to transliterate. You should explain the meaning in the target language. That is transliteration. It's different from translation. And of course, you know that you do some interpretation as well. You give your explanation or opinion of what something means. Again, PISA, you can interpret. You can have it as a footnote or within inverted comma. You give your own explanation. It's a kind of food and things like that. So that is extra, your opinion, explanation about a term or phrase, whatever it may be. So we saw the definitions of translation, transliteration, and interpretation. These are theoretical part. Of course, you should be aware of these. And also I touched upon cross-cultural research. Whatever research you do, a cross-cultural element involves. As I said, you do your research work and findings and publications in English, still it's cross-cultural. You refer books in English, you publish your findings in English, still it is cross-cultural. How? The book might have been written by someone, his culture is different from yours. Language is the same, but the culture, the understanding, everything different from yours to the original researcher. So cross-cultural, across two or more cultures, you transfer ideas, findings from one culture to another. So in your research, translation and cross-cultural element, both are important. Without these, cross-cultural element and translation, no research. If you think that you are able to do without translation and cross-cultural, it can't be an acceptable research work. So indirectly, without your conscious, you might have used translation and cross-culture in all your research work, especially student researchers, young researchers, focus this. And translation is very important aspect in it plays a vital role in your research work, in your findings. Make it more valid and make it available to wider audience. So some of the procedures, as I said, some theoretical part. The translators use various procedures in their translation work. Technical, this is at the sentence level or smaller unit, sentence, words, phrases. You translate at this level, that is technical. That is technical procedure, kind of word by word. And then that is technical procedures, you translate, analysis, source language and target language, level of sentences and smaller units. Then organizational procedures, you organize your translation in such a way it becomes effective in communication, in conveying the ideas. The translated text should be more effective in communicating the ideas. So that is organizational procedures. So procedures, technical, organizational. And also some translators, some researchers coined the domesticating and foreignizing. You can domesticate some foreign words, like as I said always, pizza, you can write pizza. You domesticate a foreign word into your local language. Same way, you can foreignize local word into the target language, foreignize. If you find no equivalent of target language, no word in the target language, so you can foreignize. You can use the word as it is, and as I said, you can give your opinion, or you can transliterate within brackets or quotes. So these are some of the procedures involved in translation: technical, organizational. You can domesticate and you can foreignize. You know that now, domesticate. You use a foreign word as it is in your local language. Same way, local language word, you can use it in a foreign language, target language. Let's move on to the strategies, translation strategies. And of course, these are theoretical part, and you can find a lot of strategies. And I have summarized into 3. So 1, translating without interruption. So when you start, don't stop in the middle, halfway through. Take one paragraph and try to finish it off at one shot. Don't stop in the middle. Then you may find it hard to continue. You don't know where you stop and what is the content, what's going on there. But the paragraph, the text conveys you. So take as small chunks, complete that chunk without stopping. And also you may come across after your translation some surface errors, or while translating you may find it. So try to correct those errors immediately. And finally, you should do your revision work after translating. Go through over and over until you are satisfied, until you feel that the translated version is the correct reflection of the original. So you should follow these strategies to get some valid translation, to make it your translation valid, your research work valid. So some of the strategies. And now, methods of translation. A lot of methods, word for word translation. You translate each and every word. You try to preserve the word order. You can see our word, the local Tamil language word order is different from English. So if you try to preserve that, definitely it would become out of context. And there are other methods, literal translation. You focus on the grammatical constructions. Again, you focus on the individual words. Again, it is out of context. And there are some other methods, faithful translation. You translate the precise contextual meaning. This sounds good. You give the contextual meaning, the precise contextual meaning of the source language in the target language. And there are many more. You researchers should decide what method, what strategy, what procedure that I am going to follow. It depends on your research questions, your aims, objectives of the research, and what are the data that you need for your analysis, and what is your analytical method, data analysis. So all depends on you and your nature of research and nature of findings. So decision is yours. But you should be aware there are different methods, strategies, and procedures. So what are the challenges? We saw some methods, procedures, strategies that you can do your translation. But what are the challenges that you are going to face when you really want to do your own translation? And again, let me reiterate, this workshop is not all about translation, but I am trying to say that translation is important. It's a vital role in your research work. So no escape. You should focus on translation. You should know the in and out, the procedures, methods, and others involved in translation. Why? To be a better researcher. We'll see some of the challenges that you are going to face. The first challenge, language is not the same everywhere. It is unique. It's culture bound, changes from one culture to another. Even the same language, you can see different varieties, different accent. One word refers something else in other culture. South Indian languages, it sounds similar, but you know that better than me, the differences between those languages, because they are unique. They are not like other botanical names or zoological names of objects. They are not nomenclatures. They vary from culture to culture, from country to country. Everything varies. We'll say marriage will mean something to you in your language, in your culture. But marriage would mean something else in foreign culture. So language is unique, so it changes from geographical location to geographical location, culture to culture. So that is the primary cause, that is the primary problem of translation. So you should face it, you should understand that, and later would see how you can handle these issues, problems, how can you solve these problems. It would be easier if you have one language or all the languages are identical, then no problem. You transfer the idea from the source language to the target language. But it's not the case. We saw that language is unique, it differs from one culture to other. So you should be familiar with the problems and you should be familiar with the solution. Some other problems, as we said, the language itself a problem. Source language, target language, and the term in one language, source language, means something else, and in the target language that is something else. And also researchers' background knowledge, command of the language involved. We'll say you want to do a research in the source language, we'll say Tamil. So you want to get more ideas, data from other language, English. Basically, you should be very fluent in both the languages. If you are not fluent, either of both or either of them, it will reflect in your research findings. And also in our research, as I said, we don't acknowledge the importance of translation, what problem you face, how you solve it, or otherwise whether you have used any interpreters, translators, all taken for granted. So make sure, my dear colleagues, participants, young researchers, don't repeat this. At least 1 page, 2 pages, allocate to acknowledge the problems and how you handle, how you tackle, how you solve these problems. Second one, you are looking for equivalence in meaning while you translate. But equivalence is hard to come by. That's where interpretation comes into play. You interpret. If you don't find any equivalence in meaning, again, PISA, you interpret within a bracket or in a footnote, in a quotation mark, you interpret if you find it hard, an equivalence of a word or a term. Equivalence is very important to establish validity in meaning. So your research findings, your research work, your research project depends on validity. If it is not valid, your hard work, your time, energy, all gone, all become useless. So make sure you find your approach is correct towards translation and towards your research work. And equivalence can be semantic, content, and semantic means the meaning should be similar, one word, one phrase, one sentence. And the content equivalence also very important. You read a text and get the content and then translate, put the same content into your target language. So these equivalent semantic content are very much important. Also conceptual equivalence, cultural equivalence, in other words, they call. These are all important, the equivalence, semantic content, cultural equivalence. As I said, marriage means something in your culture, but in the foreign culture, the same concept means something else. So conceptual equivalence also very much equally important, like semantic content and concept. So translation itself, it's a theory. It's multi-layered one. It's not a simple process. It's a complex process. Involves many elements within. So you should not take translation right in a simple way. It's a complex process. So it involves, it's a multi-layered one. We saw the procedures, the strategies, the methods. So definitely it's
Sir, somebody muted you.
Sir, please unmute yourself, sir, and then continue, sir. Sir, Umashankar, sir. Just go to your video and unmute yourself, sir. Kind attention for Vivek Babu, sir. Kindly mute your video. Yes, sir, you can continue, sir. Thank you, sir.
Yep. Thank you. And yep. And we saw that translation not simple. It's a complex process, multi-layered, and your translation also influenced by the way that you are going to analyze your data and what finding that you are looking for. So everything depends on your research questions, your aim, objectives of the research. I mean, the translation, the methods, the procedures. But once again, to refresh your memory, translation, without translation, no research. In translation, you compare the words, phrases, and human activities, culture, one culture, the source language to the target language. So translation, in other words, it's a kind of comparison. You compare one culture with the other culture. So there's a debate whether you can do that 100% to compare, to get the exact content, exact translation. The debate may continue forever. That doesn't mean you should not do translation or you should not do your research. You can't achieve 100%, but you can try to near perfection in your translation and in your research work, in your research finding. The debate may continue for a long time, but you should do justice yourself by be genuine to your work, your translation. And sometime you may find translatability, untranslatability. You don't find any exact equivalence. You don't find any comparability. So we discussed, when you find untranslatability, you can give your opinion, you can transliterate, you can interpret by following such techniques. You will make untranslatability to translatability. So everything depends on your experience, your involvement, your focus. Then you can achieve the perfection. At least you can go near perfection. Otherwise, the debates may go on and on. It should not stop you from doing your research. So follow these strategies and methods and procedures to overcome these problems. Now, we saw some concerns, some problems, some areas that you find it hard when you are doing your translation. So we'll see some of the suggestions to overcome the problems. These suggestions that you are going to use in your research work, as I said, you are going to allocate 2 or 3 pages to explain the problem that you face in your translation, and then how you have handled, how you solve those problems. And if someone wants no loss of information while translation, then no translation is possible. There are some elements of the loss of information while you are translating. You can't help it. If you are still want 100% no loss of information, then you are out of focus. You can't do that. It is impractical, impossible. So what you can do is, as I said, you can achieve near perfection. And you can translate whatever you want according to your research questions, according to your research objectives, and your data analysis methods. So no need to translate each and every word or each and every idea, each and every content. But you should know, you should decide what aspect, what content that you are going to translate. Therefore, transliteration is important. When you find it, translatability is difficult, you transliterate. As I earlier mentioned, you put it in italics, in brackets or footnotes, the transliteration, the explanations. Then the reader would easily understand you, he can follow you. Then your reliability and validity goes up. And as young researchers, you might have experienced translation is very time consuming and resource intensive. You should put more energy, time into that work, right? One page will say you want to review some literature. One page may take, you transfer information from English to English. So you transfer, you can copy, then it will become plagiarism. So you transfer the idea. So it is time consuming and resource intensive. No need to tell when the target language is different from the source language or the text available. So it is very hard. And anyway, you should ensure accuracy in your translation. So what you can do? You can get help of other researchers, your research colleagues. You translate and give it to them to see whether it is a correct version, translated version. Give them both the original, the source language and target language, not the whole text, part of it. Then they may read and understand the source and target, then they would comment on. If their comment is fine, you can continue, you can revisit and try to improve your translation. So your friends and other research colleagues would help you in this regard to get a valid translation, to ensure accuracy in your translation. Solution, more solutions. You may have a research team with various level of experience, your supervisors, examiners, others. So they are the help out there for you to solve the problems that you face while you translate, while you do your research, while you find the exact meaning of your translation. So the team should comprise of different people with different level of experience, cultural background, language proficiency. Then fine, then you can achieve the perfection in your translation. More suggestions. And you know that we saw that cultural equivalence. So that is very important. If a researcher, an experienced man, or the research team comprises of people from various cultures, as I said, marriage is sounds, gives you one idea in your culture, but some other culture, they live together. You don't know what that means in your culture. So you should ask from the native man what does it mean, and you can then transliterate in your translation work, in your research work. So people comprises of respective disciplines and various disciplines. You can make use of their experience. And also you know that vocabularies may differ from one field to another. So force may differ, mean something in social science, in applied science, force, energy may differ. So if you have a man from, a researcher from applied science and social science, then definitely there will be a better translation. And there should be a consent among people, the research team, about the translation in your research work. Well, already discussed, it is very intensive, time-consuming translation. Some translators, they follow some shortcuts. They don't translate everything. They translate whatever they need according to their research questions, their objectives. But at the same time, you can omit, you can have some shortcuts, abbreviations, but that doesn't distort the real meaning, content of the text. So you can follow shortcuts, but at the same time, you should be aware it does not alter the meaning of the original version. And there are other techniques, parsing. Parsing means you divide a sentence into parts and you analyze. So that is parsing. And you make use of the research team, the assistance, the help of the research teams. And the research team finally come to an agreement and they say, here you go, your translation is fine. You have followed all the rules, method, strategies, procedures appropriate to that particular translation, particular piece of translation. So their consent, the agreement among various people in your research team is very important. Well, even you can recruit, you can pay people with proficiency in 2 or more languages. But you can ask your translator to translate from the source language to the target language. That is called forward translation. Then again, you can ask the backward translation from target language to the source language, but without looking at the source language. These are some of the techniques you to get perfection in your translation. Forward translation, backward translation, and again you can revisit as a researcher. That is your duty to make sure the expected quality is achieved in your translation, in your research. If your translation is weak, there is no need to mention the quality of your research work. At the very set, I said, fundamental, the translation, everything, your research work, your quality, your finding, depends on translation. And they use, even you can use some other scales. Only here, I have summarized four-point scale. You can look into semantic, the meaning of your text. And you can focus on method of translation. You collect qualitative data through interviews, field notes, and books or somewhere. So the method, according to the method, your translation, your strategy, your procedures, everything varies. So these are some of the approaches that you could use to overcome the problem that you face in translation. Criterion. So this is one of the approach in the 4-point scale. Criterion. That means you should be consistent in both culture, the target language and the source language. So that is criterion. And conceptual equivalence, already we discussed, that is also called as cultural equivalence. Your translation should be equal to the target language culture. Otherwise, it will become a foreign word. Your local reader would not understand. If he or she doesn't understand mean, your findings, your research work, your project is in a balance. So follow these. If no equivalent words in English, source language you do target language, and we saw that you should use quotes, transliterate as a footnote within brackets and within inverted commas. So finding equivalent is difficult, then you should follow some techniques. Transliteration is good. It would help you to find, not to find equivalent, but to explain the idea to the reader. And I said, some people, they only translate the key themes, issues, which could answer their research questions. This may save time and energy, and it needs less transcribing. And when you do your translation, when you come across problems, you should retranslate it. You read first you translate a short text, and then you read, and if you are satisfied, fine. Otherwise, you should retranslate it if a problem emerges. Until you are satisfied, do that. This is all for validity and quality issues, reliability issues. And WHO, their suggestion, you should have a review panel, a team of researchers. It should comprise bilingual people, source language, target language people. They are good at both languages. And the experts in the field, whatever field you do your research, the field of your research, the experts, then they would suggest, they would give you their expert thoughts to modify your findings, the translations. And also they suggest to have members of the population, target culture, people from the target culture, give them to read. If they understand, fine. After all, your research is for them. So better have a review panel comprising all these people. This is good practice. Then no one put your research into question. No one would argue reliability and validity and quality issues. So try to follow these in your research work. Finally, let me summarize. So, and I said translation is fundamental, and in your research work, it is a cross-cultural translation involves. Whatever research, whatever project you involve in, it involves elements of cross-cultural translation. And also at the very beginning, I said the trend is to do research in your source language. That is for your own good of your own people. After all, you do research for their own good to find solutions to the burning issues in your community, the people in your community. So source language research is the trend now. After that, if you want, you can translate, you put it into English for get wider audience. Well, and I detailed how you can solve the key issues when you translate, the strategies, the methods that you can apply when you do your translation. And as I said, there's a debate when you translate whether it's the same, the meaning and relevant from source to data. Let's that debate going on, but you can't stop there. You should do your research, but to make it more reliable, try to follow these strategies and the issues. And for a novice, a student researcher like you, translation is a challenge. But with my suggestions and others' suggestions, if you follow those, give enough consideration to their suggestion, then you can achieve whatever you want in your translation. So finally, let me conclude by saying good luck, all of you guys. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank
And
you very much.
I would like the participants to post your questions in the chat box.
Yeah.
Participants, for a while, stop thanking the presenter and post your questions alone, because we are finding it difficult to scroll down and point the questions. Let us make this discussion session a fruitful one, because we have a versatile personality among us today from Sri Lanka. You can post your questions in the chat box. Sir, there is a question
Yep.
from Udam Singh. Is there any difference to translate poetry and prose?
Yep. It is kind of, as I said, the decision is up to the researcher. Whatever he feels, it depends according to his focus, the objectives of the research questions, and the findings and the data that he is looking for, whether it is prose or short stories or whatever. But it all depends on the researcher and the purpose of the research and what type of information that he is looking for. And whether the finding data would answer his questions, research questions, then fine. He should decide what type of translation that he is going to do, what are the strategies, methods, and procedures that he is going to follow. So all depend on the researcher, and decision is the researcher. He should decide on. Otherwise, there is no particular method, ways, strategies, procedures to say, okay, for prose you should do this, and for short stories or poems you should do, you should follow, you should adapt some other strategies. So, well, open. The researcher should realize which method, which strategy would better suit his way of approach, research approach, the research design. Then he should decide, all right, I am going to follow this particular strategy, and then he should continue with that. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. So next is how to decide between exact equivalence and comparative equivalence.
Yep. And I said, you should have some sort of a bilingual person when you don't have any exact equivalence. And you can have someone from your own community to, to read and understand. If he can understand, that is fine, that is the equivalence. And also you can have someone who is very much proficient in both of the languages, source language and target language. And then here you go, you get the equivalent. If he is satisfied, if someone out of the community, as a colleague, research colleague, as a panel of the research, if he is satisfied, if he can understand, there you go, that is the equivalence. So it is simple. If the researchers, if the young researchers follows some of the suggestions that I put forward in my workshop, everything goes well. So
Right.
they should
Yes, sir.
follow, they should decide, and they
Yes,
can make use of the senior colleagues, senior research fellows to guide them before they start.
yes,
Once,
sir. Thank you, sir.
thank you.
Is there any limitation to use transliteration in our research?
Transliteration, yeah, it all depends. It is the research requirement. We'll say you are supposed to write your report in 80,000 words, right? You may have more transliteration. When your language, source language is totally different from the target language, you may have a lot to translate because you don't find any equivalence there. So there is no hard and partial rule. Okay, this much of transliteration and this much of translation. No. But always remember the plagiarism issues. When you copy as it is, you are in trouble. So make sure you should acknowledge where
Yes,
you
sir.
got the source from. So there is no limit for translation or transliteration. All depend on your research supervisor, your institution, and they may tell you in the guidebook, they might have given you some suggestions, guidance, how much translation, how much transliteration that you can adopt in your research work. So it is not the translator, it is the research team and the institution and their requirement to
Yes, sir.
decide on how much transliteration that one can adopt
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
in
Thank
the
you, sir. And next is how to translate ancient sacred texts.
how to translate Asian what?
Ancient sacred texts.
Asian standard text.
Yes, sir. Ancient sacred texts.
Yeah, again, you can follow whatever strategy, methods, and the procedures. There is no particular method, okay, this is the particular method for a particular genre, and this is the strategy for a particular genre. No. After all, you are doing your research. After all, you are doing your translation for the target audience. If the target audience is satisfied, if they can understand your research work, your translation, that's it. So don't restrict yourself or don't have any sort of a boundary. You are free. All
Yes, sir.
depends. But always remember the reliability and validity issues, and your work is to the target audience. If the target audience are fine, there
Yes,
you
sir.
go. Your
Yes,
research work is done.
yes, sir. So there is a question like if we are borrowing a foreign word into our language, how do we transliterate it? Which pronunciation to be followed? For example, bridge, fridge, judge, etc.
Yeah, that is also depend, right? If it is an you do a research in we'll say applied linguistics, translation matters. But some other research, it's not a translation, it's the meaning of the word. As I said, pizza, fine. You can call it pizza or pizza or something, doesn't matter. But the idea, the target audience should understand, okay, this particular word means this. So the understanding is very important, not other language aspects like pronunciation and things like that. No, meaning is important. Your understanding is important. If the equivalence, if you achieve the equivalence, that's it. There's no, these are secondary issues, the pronunciation and things like that, right? And no, because we know that there's no exact equivalence, then you transliterate there and you explain. Even you can give your opinion as in your footnote to further explanation, to make it more clear to the target audience. Otherwise,
Yes, sir.
the pronunciation and things like that are secondary. No.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. And we have a practical question that should we seek permission from the author of the original work before working on it? And should he or she approve the translated work?
You mean my permission?
Yes, sir. Should we ask the permission of the source author?
Yeah, with acknowledgement.
Yes,
That
sir.
is the practice, right? The finding, the research work is for others, right? Not for the researcher himself or herself, right? Anyone can use, but proper acknowledgement. Otherwise, the young researchers are in danger because of plagiarism issues. So they should
Yes, sir.
know, okay, I borrowed this idea from a particular researcher. I should acknowledge, I should honor the researcher's hard work. So that's it. So
Yes, sir.
acknowledgement is very important. And
Yes, sir.
yeah,
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. And how to translate the jargon or dialects?
yeah. Sometimes you don't get the exact equivalence.
Yes.
Sometimes that's where transliteration is very important, and the translation, the jargons. What you are trying to do, you are trying to convey a message through your jargon. So the message is important, not your jargon, not your terminology, not your linguistic features. No. The jargon is to convey an idea, convey a message to the target audience. So whatever jargon it may be, right? We saw that proverbs and things like that. We tried to get the near parallel to the jargon, to the proverbs. So the idiomatic phrases. So it is not, there's no hard and partial rule. So the idea is important. The idea that the jargon tried to convey. So that's it. So it is very, very free, right? The translator is very, but he should follow some sort of guidelines, and others should understand. It should be genuine. He should be faithful to the original. The jargon says and tries to convey one idea, but the translation conveys some other ideas. No. But the idea, the content is important, not just the
No, sir,
word.
sorry for interrupting. Sorry for disturbing. Sir, if it is a running text, there is a dialect difference. The same page, there is a rickshaw man speech, there is a youngster speech, there is a baby speech. How can we differentiate that? Then there will be lot of transliteration only in that particular page. How we
Yeah,
can
why not?
differentiate?
Why? Yeah, good. You can translate it. And as I originally said, the target audience, if they can understand, if they can't understand what the point of giving the childish and other languages in a particular sheet of paper, so you should limit to have only one, that only the childish talk. Then you transliterate. Then it's limited to one. Why should you try to have?
Okay, how can we show the difference, sir? It's a rickshaw man speech. It's like a youngster speech. How we can differentiate in the same page, in the same text, actually?
Yeah, you should mention that. In your transliterate, you should mention that, okay, this is a childish, it's a childish talk. This is an adult one. The adult use this terminology and this idea. So that is everything. That's what I say.
Okay, the transliteration should be in the text and the explanation should be in the footnotes. Is it right, sir?
Yeah, good. Your own explanation. That is not transliteration. That is interpretation.
Okay.
You interpret there. That is good. You follow both translation, transliteration, and interpretation. Here you go. Your reader, your target audience, better understand everything. So there's no artificial rule, and you should decide how much information I should put in one page. Why should you put a lot on one page?
Okay,
then
very kind of you. Thank you, sir.
Whether others would accept, no, that is up to you. The research, I said, all depends on you. How much information that I am going to have on a particular page. Then you have it a limited idea and limited information there. Then
thanks a lot, sir.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much, sir. And the last question to share with you is, there is a question asking, share your perspective on back translation.
There is no such called bad translation.
Back, sir. BACK, back.
Back translation. Well done.
Yes,
yep. So forward translation, you know that you have a text that is the source language. We'll say Tamil. The target language is English. That is forward translation. Again, you translate from the target language to the source language. From first, the source is English, then the target is Tamil. Then from Tamil, then again to, without looking at the source language, then you compare. If it is same, the idea is same, the content is same, you are right, you are perfect. So that is backward translation. You first forward translate, then backward it. For backward translation, you should have forward translation first. You forward translate from English to Tamil, then from Tamil to English, and then compare. That is backward translation.
Hello, sir. Good morning.
Yeah, good.
Hello.
Yeah, I can hear you.
So this is Valarmati from English department, sir. So can we translate into our phonetic languages, sir? Any poem or any short stories? Is it possible, or it will be a plagiarism or some other?
No, it is possible. That's what I said. Everything depends on your research purpose. Why you do your research? What is your research question? What is your research project all about? So you can do that. That is, of course, there is no restriction. All depend. If the findings, if these translation are important to your findings, then you translate. So your research question, your research design, your objectives of the research come into play there to make this decision. Otherwise, no. Plagiarism issues, you can simply overcome that by acknowledging. And also, the translation is for that. You translate. Not the exact word, but transliteration and interpretation and translation. In translation, you don't give the exact words. Your idea, you translate the content, idea only. So there's no plagiarism issues involved.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you.
Sir,
Yes, sir. Thank you very much.
excuse me, ma'am. May I ask a question, ma'am?
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, see, thank you, ma'am. Sir, shall we translate a book more than 300 pages and submit it to postdoctoral thesis? Is it acceptable, sir?
So this question should go to your research institution, so your supervisors and others. If they accept, why not? I can't comment on that. It all depends on your research requirement. And whether that particular report is accepted, then why not? Do it. If it is not accepted by the institution, so no point of translation.
Yeah.
So it all depends on your requirement of the institution. If the institution accepts, then first you ask them. I'm going to
Thank you,
translate whether you are going to accept it. If they accept, fine. You go on.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
Thank
Hello.
you.
Yes, sir.
Hello.
Thank you so much, sir.
Hello.
Yes,
Hello.
sir.
Madam, can I ask the question to sir, madam?
Yes, sir. Yes.
Sir, my question is, can we translate two three textbooks and do a research on it at the doctoral level?
Can you repeat it again, please?
Sir, I hope
Sir,
your voice is breaking, so repeat it again. And
sure,
participants, if you have any questions, post it in the chat box, please.
sure. Sir, is it possible to translate some textbook of literary value and analyze the issues for doing PhD research work?
Yeah, and the previous researcher also asked the same question. Yeah, you can translate and you can analyze the issues, and it can be a PhD thesis report, but your institution should accept that. Your supervisor should accept that. Your examiner should say yes. So this is not a matter of a fact that to be decided by someone else. That is to be decided by your research institution and the requirements that their research institution and your supervisors are looking for. So there is, I said that there's no hard and partial rule that I should translate this much and this much, or I should translate the particular genre and whether that is suitable for my PhD thesis report. No, you are free, but speak to someone, the person concerned, who has the authority to say yes. I can simply say yes, but your supervisor may say, your research institution may say, sorry, we can't accept. So, no. So it is not me, but your research institution should answer these questions.
Yes, sir. Thank you,
Madam?
sir. And we
Thank you,
just come to the end of the discussion session, sir. And
Madam, one question, madam.
participants,
Last
please
question.
mute your. Yes, Chakrapani, sir. See.
Yeah, madam. Thank you very much, madam. Sir, it's a good morning, sir. I'm Chakrapani,
Good morning to you.
calling from Andhra Pradesh. Sir, my question is very clear, sir. From source language to target language, one textbook is translated by the author. The author maybe put some emotions and feelings. While you translating from one text to another text, for example, if I could translate from Telugu to English or English to Telugu, maybe I missed the feelings and emotion of the other. So now how can we put the same feelings in the text? Can you please give me?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's hard always to bring in the same feeling, even when we appreciate, criticize a poem, right? The author might have written to express a different feeling, but we express another feeling. So everything depends. As I said originally, if you can find someone who speaks the source language and then again show them, I have translated here, look, whether you get the same feeling, what do you feel by reading this? So get many bilingual speakers and others, a panel of researchers to make it more meaningful. That's a good question. These feelings and other emotions, it's hard to
Yes, sir.
translate.
Madam,
So,
final question, madam. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much, Andy.
Sir, we come to the end of the discussion session, and participants, please mute your audio and video. Sir, I would like to thank you for a wonderful session today, sir. You have enriched knowledge about translation process through the base of language appreciation. As you pointed out in your presentation about the technical procedures, organizational procedures, domesticating words, etc., and everything you underlined made us clear about the translation process. And though we have many theoretical strategies to follow while translating in books and other materials, the strategies that you have given us out of your own experience will surely serve as a guiding star to us, sir. Open-heartedly, I would like to express that actually you have given us the self-confidence to deal with translation. And thank you so much for the knowledge packed session, sir. I thank you on behalf of Principal Management and Teaching Fraternity of Sri VASAVI College, Erode, sir. We are much obliged to you for making this possible for us, sir. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us in this platform. Thank you.
Thank you, Maithili. Thank you for this chance. Thank you very
Yes,
much.
sir. Yes, sir.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, sir. You
Thank you,
can
sir.
turn off. And audience participants here, we have been here for